You're listening to the Safe at Home Security Guide Show, Episode 2. Welcome to the Safe at Home Security Guide Show with Dave, your host. Here you'll discover practical home security tips and information that you can do yourself to help you feel safe at home. Find us online at safeathomesecurityguide.com. Hi, it's Dave here. Thanks for joining me for this episode of Safe at Home. In this installment, we're going to review 10 common home security mistakes that people often make. I hope that by pointing them out, you'll be better able to protect yourself and your home. I'll also give plenty of tips that I've learned for how to correct these mistakes. As I was putting this list together, I realized that I was guilty of some of them before my place was broken into a few months ago. I've made some improvements, but I'm sure I still have room for more. I don't mind admitting that. I am, after all, still learning about this topic and sharing with you as I go along with this show. I think it's even safe to say that for both my recent break-in and the one several years ago at a different location, the mistakes I was guilty of were related to the break-ins. To say that another way, if I hadn't been guilty of those mistakes, I probably wouldn't have been burglarized. But then, I might not be doing this show, so maybe it's all been for the best. As I mentioned last time, my goal here isn't to scare you into buying an alarm system or to scare you at all, but I do hope that you'll be motivated to take whatever action you think will best protect yourself. You've taken a big first step already by listening to this show. I hope you'll continue listening. I've got plenty more planned for future episodes. As I started learning about home security, I realized that so much of the steps you can take all revolve around just trying to get your burglar to choose another target, and that it can often be really small or easy things that will convince him to move on. It's almost like it's hit or miss, so you want to stack the odds in your favor. So today's topic of common mistakes to avoid really jumped out at me as being worth looking into because these little improvements can make all the difference in the world between sleeping peacefully at night and going to bed not feeling safe, even in your own bed. Or the difference between going out to enjoy yourself for an evening and, like me now, wondering whether your stuff will even still be there when you come home, and feeling this way every time you leave the house. So here's a disclaimer. I didn't put the list in any particular order. I didn't think it was the kind of thing that was easily quantifiable. And I wouldn't want you to rely on what at best could only be a subjective ranking and then maybe have a false sense of security if the top few mistakes didn't apply to you. Does that make sense? As far as I'm concerned, all of these mistakes should be avoided, and improving any of them can go a long way toward feeling safe at home. But having said that, I think there is one general mistake that lots of us make. It probably is more important than any of the ones I'll get to in a moment, and it is assuming that it won't happen to you. I don't think there is any city, community, or neighborhood that is completely immune from crime. There are definitely some that are safer than others, but burglaries can and do happen anywhere. Since there is some randomness as to whether you'll ever experience a break-in, you should be prepared under the expectation that it can happen to you, rather than living under the assumption that it won't. Fortunately, the fact that you're listening to this means you already recognize it's possible and want to take steps to protect yourself better, and little steps can make a huge difference. So let's dig right in. Here are 10 common home security mistakes that everyone should avoid in order to feel and be safe at home. Mistake number 1. Broken or old locks on doors and windows, or even the broken or old doors and windows themselves. This one may not seem obvious after you think about it a bit. After all, a broken latch or lock might not be visible, but all that really means is that it won't attract a burglar. You don't want to make their job easy if they should happen to try to open it. So there are actually a whole bunch of problems that fall into this category. First, many doors can easily be kicked in. This is how my burglar got into my home several years back, by kicking in an older door that I probably should have had replaced. The experts recommend having a sturdy, reinforced steel door. They also recommend improving the strike plate on your door. The strike plate is a piece of metal that attaches to the door frame or door jamb, where the deadbolt or latch extends into the frame. I'll put a photo of a basic typical strike plate in the show notes post on the website, in case you're not sure what I'm talking about. But to start with, make sure that you have a strike plate on all of your outside doors. You don't want a deadbolt extending directly into the wooden frame, but unfortunately, most strike plates come with relatively short screws, like an inch or so. These can easily pull out with a good kick to the door, ripping the strike plate out of the door frame and probably shattering the frame, and then the burglar's in. Rather than being vulnerable because of a few insufficient screws, use long screws, at least 3 inches or better yet 3.5 inches to secure the strike plate. Second, make sure you have a deadbolt on every outside door. This is really important. As I'm sure you know, a deadbolt is much harder to defeat than spring-loaded latches, which you should never rely on for outside doors. Third, did you change the locks when you moved in? Not changing the locks isn't quite like leaving the place wide open, but it does mean that someone may have a key to your place, and if they didn't change the locks when they moved in, then someone else may have a key as well. This can get a little tricky with apartments. Not all landlords are going to be proactive about this. You might need to ask them or even bug them a bit to get them to change locks. In the worst case, you can just offer to spring for it yourself. This might actually shame them into taking care of it, but if not, maybe you'll just have to suck it up. I guess it comes down to your comfort level, but don't shortchange yourself. Your security and protection is important. Don't give up easily. Fortunately, changing locks isn't something that's expensive or difficult to do. All it really takes is a phone call to a locksmith. If you think the locks could stand to be upgraded at the same time, maybe you can kill two birds with one stone and take care of all of that at once. And that brings us to the next mistake on our list, which is related, and that is number 2, unlocked doors and windows. This one does seem pretty obvious, but have you ever gone over to a neighbor's house or apartment intending to come right back but ended up staying much longer? Have you ever gone to run a quick errand and decided to not bother locking up because you'd be back so quickly? Have you ever slept with a window open in the room or a different room? When I came across this mistake, I wasn't even going to include it in my list because it seemed so obvious. I never leave the doors unlocked when running errands, so I thought maybe it wasn't worth including. But then I thought back to when I lived in my house instead of my current apartment, and I started recalling plenty of times where I was out mowing the lawn or doing other yard work, working out in the garage, sitting out on the patio, where I had left the doors open and someone could have seized on the opportunity and walked right in without me even knowing. And then I started thinking about windows. There were plenty of times where I ran a quick errand or two and left windows open to let fresh air in. Even in my apartment, I used to occasionally do this. Never for extended periods like when I went to work, but definitely for periods long enough for someone to have come in and grab a few things and then run off. So I guess after all, the mistake definitely deserves to be on the list, despite seeming so obvious. Mistake number 3. Not doing a convincing job of giving the impression someone is home, or perhaps in other words, making it obvious no one is home. This is a big one, and it's burned me twice. There are a number of ways to make it obvious no one is home. First, letting mail pile up outside when you're gone on vacation. I even do this sometimes when I am home. There never seems to be anything worthwhile in the mail anyway, so I just let it sit sometimes. And just thinking about this, my landlord who lives upstairs is actually away on vacation right now, and I did notice today that he's got junk mail and restaurant flyers piling up at his mailbox. Maybe I should do both of us a favor and just bring all that in so it doesn't advertise his absence. A second way to make it obvious no one is home is leaving your lights off in the evening. A darkened house after the sun goes down is a dead giveaway that no one's home. I'm not talking about the middle of the night when most people are sleeping, but the evening and early night hours when, if you were home, you'd be up and the lights would be on. Knowing this is a problem, what too many people do is they turn on a light when they leave, and for some reason it's a single light and it usually always seems to be over the kitchen sink. A single light on like this is another dead giveaway that no one is home. You might as well just leave the light off. I'm not even sure what the logic is behind the single light approach. You should definitely try to be more convincing than this. At the very minimum, if you're only going to turn on one light, at least make it a light facing the street so that anyone going by casually will see the light and maybe, hopefully, keep on going. As much as I hate to see electricity being wasted, a much better approach is to turn on the lights in multiple rooms as if someone were home. And obviously, you want to make sure your blinds or curtains are closed, or you're right back to making it clear no one's home. Even better still is to use timers to control lights throughout your place. Having lights going on and off does a much better job of giving the impression someone is home. If you have newer electronic-style timers, use the random feature if it exists. Mistake number 4, hiding your key outside. So here's another item that I wasn't even going to include. But again, after I thought about it, I decided it made sense after all. First, I'll say I've never ever left a key under the doormat or one of those fake hide-a-key rocks, and I don't know anyone who has. Not that that's something they'd necessarily have shared with me. But I do know people that use an outdoor lockbox for a spare set of keys, similar to what real estate agents use to show homes. I'm not sure how secure those things are. Like anything else, there probably are some models that are better than others. But to me, leaving a key outdoors, period, seems like it's asking for trouble. One variant of this mistake is to leave a set of house keys in your car. Whether the car is at home or not doesn't really matter. Leaving keys in a visible spot like a cup holder is probably not a whole lot better than leaving a key under your doormat, especially if you're prone to sometimes forgetting to lock the car. Mistake number 5, deactivated alarm systems. I think this one speaks for itself, but unfortunately it's common. If you've gone through the trouble to install and the expense of paying for alarms and monitoring, the least you can do is activate the system. After all, it can only help you if you're using it. I suppose that if you advertise that you have an alarm system, that in itself might scare off a few potential intruders, but for the ones who know that most people don't always activate their systems, it could be well worth it for them to try their luck and test the system. They can always run off if the alarm triggers. It's all too easy to only take the trouble to activate an alarm system when you're going to be gone for some time. Chances are, most of the time, you won't activate it as often as you ought. If you have an alarm system, don't forget to use it, especially at the times when you might be tempted to not bother, such as when running short errands or going to bed at night.